It is September 7th, 2014. I am Aaron Gardner, your host. This is the Red State Weekly Briefing. Before we get rolling here, I just want to touch on something real quick that Leduc saw on the social medias and affects a lot of people in the right blogosphere. One of the really great bloggers and champions on the right, Mandy Nagy, has suffered a stroke, and apparently she is going to be going to the hospital to get a surgery to relieve the pressure on her brain. We just want to ask that everybody reach out and send out their prayers to Mandy Nagy and her family. She was supposed to start as the editor at the front page of the Legal Insurrection tomorrow. So just prayers for her and her family and everyone around her, and just be with her. But beyond that, we still have news report this week. So we're going to go back and look at this week in review. There's a couple things that have happened over this weekend that we actually are going to touch on quite a bit. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the new NBC Marist poll that came out, a likely voter poll, one of the first likely voter polls, covers various battleground states in the Senate. We're also going to talk a little bit about immigration and Obama's decision to delay the executive order to allow a lot of these people to stay, a lot of these legal immigrants to stay here in the country, even though the Congress has chosen not to act on immigration at this point. We're also going to talk a little bit about ISIS, a little bit more, and what has happened in the last week, ISIL or ISIS, and we'll actually talk about why there's a controversy between ISIL and ISIS. But one other thing we're going to talk about a little bit is the Fox News special 13 Hours at Benghazi. Leduc and I both watched it, and it was very, very emotionally draining to watch that, and it answered a lot of questions, and also brought up a lot more questions. Let's go ahead and start with the NBC Marist poll. Joe, I want to come over to you real quick just for a brief overview of the polling in the states, and just give me a recap of what's there, and then we'll discuss a little bit about each state.
There were four key areas that they polled. Two of them are from your backyard. That would be the governor's race and the senator's race, and then there was also the Senate race out of Kentucky and the Senate race out of Arkansas. The results of this poll I thought were interesting in that those were the widest margins we've seen in those races, at least in some time. I think the closest we might have seen, let's see, Tom Cotton versus Mark Pryor for Senate in Arkansas. Not as big of an outlier. I think, let's see, a result that was released in the beginning, actually earlier this month, had Cotton at +4, and this one, the NBC Marist poll, has that at +5. The Kentucky race, that has McConnell up ahead of Allison Lundgren Grimes, has him up +8 in that one, and then in your backyard, Aaron, you've got Hickenlooper in that poll up +4, and Udall up +6, I think it was. Yeah, +6. And again, specifically in those two, the Colorado ones, those two looked like they were the biggest outliers in those races that we've seen in polls coming out of there for a while.
Well, what's interesting is a limited number of polls that we've had out of Colorado, considering how highly contested it is and how much emphasis is put on Colorado as a state. From my own point of view on this Marist poll, there are some interesting things in it. One of the interesting things that I found, and a couple other people found this as well and published it, one of them is Colorado Peak Politics. I'll just do a quick shout out to them. At Peak Politics, I believe, is their Twitter account. But Colorado Peak Politics pointed out that between the July Marist poll and this Marist poll, they had a shift in like 5 points or something like that in Democrats. So we have more Democrats, 5 points worth more Democrats in this poll than we did in July. Now, that's interesting to me, because if the July poll said that they were leading by eight registered voters for the Senate race, and this new poll here says that they're leading by 8 registered voters, then with that shift there, you'd think they're actually losing ground. If that shift is actually correct, if they had to have +5 in the Democrat column in order to keep an 8-point lead, that isn't exactly something that I'd be troubled by that if I was the Udall campaign, honestly, especially when it breaks down to likely voters and you're at a 6-point lead. If there's a 5-point shift in that polling, if those 5 points of Democrats don't show up, and it is a more 30-30-30 split, it would be, it would be basically a tie game at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I see it.
With a 3.5 margin of error, that's even less good news for the Udall campaign, and I think if they aren't worrying, they should be, because their polling hasn't been as great as you would like sitting senators to be at this point.
Right, and I think most of that is that they've relied upon this war on women philosophy and messaging rhetoric, and honestly, I think most people are over it. A lot of people see through it nowadays. I think the people the margins are so small here, as far as they look at these niche groups, these women who are 18 to 26, and they want to make sure to get them out and all this, and it's especially the single ones, and all that. But to me, I just think Colorado is so much more than just these niche voters that the Democrats are trying to get to. And I think both the governor and Mark Udall are really not sitting on good ground. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get a more likely voter poll much closer in the session and actually show Bob Beaupre starting to take a small margin of lead over Governor Hickenlooper. One thing I'd like to commend Cory Gardner on is in response to the war on women narrative that has been pushed against him, he's actually been out supporting over-the-counter birth control, which I think is an important step forward. I know there's some people who won't like that and who personally wouldn't agree with it, but honestly, I think that as a policy, we can agree that it's something that we can move forward on and kind of take away from the GOP side, from the conservative side, take away a wedge issue that the Democrats constantly use against us. What do you think, Connell, widening the gap on Munger and Grimes? Do you think he's just got a political machine that totally has that state locked down, or what do you think's going on there after all the betrayals that have happened? Let me ask you that way.
Yeah. Mitch McConnell is not an inspiring figure. But if you've been in office since before you, I, and Cunningham here have been born, and you've paid enough people off, you're either a Democrat or you're a really entrenched Republican, and it's hard to beat the hell out of you and beat you and knock you out of office. So I bet you McConnell wins by less than 5, when it's all said and done. But
really?
He's going to win. Yeah, because, Mitch McConnell, while he's entrenched, what southern state are we talking about? I really don't care right now. But he's...
Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky, that's right. Kentucky, Tennessee, I don't know. But he's been there forever, and he's paid a lot of people off, and a lot of people have, earned jobs off him. And in Washington, D.C., the incestuous merry-go-round of people who have constantly been hired and rehired by people who are in the establishment. Mitch McConnell has put a lot of people on those merry-go-rounds. So, he's got friends in high places. He's going to win re-election. And I'm really excited. I don't know about the two of you, but I can't wait until January 3rd, 2015, and the Republicans take the Senate, and immediately the campaign for we got to get a president in 2016. So hold on till 2017, kids, because when we do, it's going to change.
Well, wow, he just straight up walked off scene there.
I don't know, guys. I don't mean to be the bummer in the crowd right now, but McConnell's going to win. The Republicans are going to take the Senate by 2 or 3 seats, and then we're going to start this circle jerk all over again about we have to wait until we get somebody in the White House that's GOP and everything. I don't know.
You really think it's going to be that thin? You think the margin is going to be that thin? We're only going to take it by 1 or 2 seats. You think like 51, 52 majority?
2, 3. In Michigan here, I have no idea what and I can only speak knowledgeably about what's going on in Michigan. In Michigan here, Terry Lynn Land, who was on statewide office twice, Secretary of State, one time she won by 10 points, I believe. They're blowing it here. And they're blowing it against a guy that basically they have to put a mirror underneath his nose to make sure he's breathing. I don't understand it. And there are some other states that I've seen that it's like, really, a Republican should be kicking butt. I mean, down in Kansas, Pat Roberts is kind of like, they got the Dems got the Dem to drop out, and the Independent, who's really the Dem, is basically, I mean, Pat, there's a seat up for grabs in Kansas right now, in Republican Kansas. Like, Aaron, you're wearing that Red State polo. You could go into Kansas right now and get elected just wearing that red shirt.
Oh, well, yeah.
And Pat Roberts, not saying that he's in trouble, but they're putting this into, boy, it's a little bit too close to call. So I don't think
what's funny. What's funny about that, is Pat Roberts. We were told, we have to vote for him in the primary because he's the only one who can win. And they went scorched earth on Milton Wolf, a doctor, a private sector guy who decided to get in because of Obamacare and all that stuff, and he seemed to be a good guy. And he didn't run an awful campaign. He didn't run a great campaign. But, we're now stuck with Pat Roberts, and basically I believe there was a post out this week that basically the NRSC is now taking over his campaign, which, I mean, I don't know how much better they're going to do for him than he can do for himself.
You don't have faith in the NRSC? What's wrong with you?
What was that?
You don't have faith in the NRSC? They've done wonders so far.
You know what? And I know this is going to sound like sour grapes and everything and such, but I've had a burr in my butt since Mississippi, and I don't like it when I'm called a racist by the people who are now that it's like, hey, let's all come together. It's like, didn't you just 60 days ago say people that thought like me were a bunch of racists? Oh, and now we're supposed to sing Kumbaya? I don't like Disney movies, kids. Okay, I hate the ending.
No.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense, and I understand that. Now, on the other hand, I do say, hey, there's more on the line than my own personal pride, so I suck it up a lot of times, and I vote for who I need to vote for. But, there are times that, you're better off either not voting or voting for the Democrat. It's that way sometimes. Now, let's go back to this polling, though, a little bit more. Let's talk about Arkansas and Tom Cotton. Now, the Democrats really thought that they were going to be able to do this there, right? I mean, they think that they're going to still pull this off there, don't they?
Oh yeah, they do. The Democrats, I don't think until recently have learned just how vulnerable Mark Pryor is, and I think they weren't paying attention to the signs, and it's going to come across to them as a slap in the face come November. But I think between Arkansas and here in my state, Louisiana, I don't think they realize how in trouble they are. Mark Pryor, now in a likely voter poll, Mark Pryor's down 5. That's not good. In no way. I don't know if the Democrats are maybe not paying attention. Maybe maybe this is one of the days when Harry Reid didn't take his meds. I don't know. But that nobody in the Democrat Party really seems to be panicking over this is kind of worrisome.
But they are. And that actually is a great segue here 15 minutes into the Red State Weekly Briefing for us to talk about our next issue, which is immigration. They're absolutely freaking out. The Democrats are totally freaking out. That's what the entire immigration debate was for, is because they freaked out. They figured that would be the way to get the points on the board for them. And now we have Obama yesterday basically backtracking on his promise to do an executive order before the election to allow amnesty. Or some form of amnesty. I'm going to do amnesty air quotes because everybody has a different meaning of amnesty, and I don't really want to get into that debate today. But so executive order amnesty is now off the table until after the election. Now this is kind of a funny, familiar thing if you've done the regular weekly briefing before. The other for the mayor of Colorado kind of doing with this Nathan Dunlap execution or clemency issue. So it's kind of a progressive left-wing style of leadership to not make a decision on things, or to wait, or to take the electorate out of the equation, so you can do what you want when you have more time, when you can transmit things to Vladimir. But so the immigration thing.
See what you did there?
Yeah, I did there. Nice. But the immigration debate and his rescinding of his promise to provide executive amnesty and postponing this till after the election. Now, nobody thought that this was going to have to happen. According to a BuzzFeed post, which was very thorough, great reporting in this post, the Democrats, specifically Harry Reid, believed that this wasn't going to be an issue for them, that pushing this immigration thing and pushing the executive order, that they would never have to delay that the people would be with them, and they wouldn't have any issues, and they'd skyrocket in the polls. In fact, the Obama administration actually said that it was a ploy to get the GOP to come out and overreach and promise impeachment or go for impeachment before the 2014 midterm elections. So at this point, not only does the recension of the promise piss off the activists on the left, the La Raza people, and all the different state-level groups that are activists for immigration change and policy and amnesty and whatnot, you also find out that he never really even cared about you in the first place. Not only is he going to delay it, but the whole thing was only political. So I'm wondering, in the next month, as this starts to trickle out, as this gets more coverage, because it's gonna. This is something that upsets the left and upsets the media, because they were lied to for months and months and months about what he was going to do, and then he pulls the rug out from underneath them. I think this is going to get a lot more coverage, and I think it's actually going to depress the Hispanic vote for the Democrats in the midterm elections. Joe, what do you think about that?
I think basically the same thing. He has now officially decided, hey, let's just depress the Latino turnout. And I think, okay, I don't know what to think. I don't know why they would decide. I don't know why they would say that public, why they would come out with that, why they would say that out loud to anybody. There are some times when even, if I don't like the guy, I think that Obama should keep his mouth shut on what he actually, on what his, agenda is. And this is one of those times when the administration is like, oh, screw it, we'll tell him. Yeah, this was a political ploy. Sorry guys, our gambit didn't work, and now he's going to have to deal with the results here. He's got activist groups, immigration activist groups that are now upset at him, and we saw that in the BuzzFeed article because the administration saw fit to tell activist groups before they made the official announcement that they were going to be that they were going to be doing this, and they gave the activist groups plenty of time to release their statements, again for reasons that escape me. This was clearly, and
they do that. They do that sort of stuff so they can claim that we're all one big happy family working towards one goal. And the quote in there that the administration, the message that they gave to the activists was that the timing shouldn't be what matters to them. It should be the ultimate goal of what they're trying to achieve that matters. Which to me is kind of like a blow-off type of thing. It's like somebody giving you a new title but no promotion and saying, hey, look, it's not the money that matters. It's the title that you have that really matters. What was that?
You're so important.
Yeah, exactly. But, you ask why they're doing this. I think you already answered your own question. I think they know that they said that that their internal polls showed that this wasn't working for them, that this wasn't moving the dial for them. And when you think about it, we're talking about, you know, Arkansas. That's an immigration is, and then that's an area where immigration is going to impact. Now, the odd thing is in Colorado here, Mark Udall is actually upset as well. But here's the thing. Here's what I believe Mark Udall is going to try and do, because this is what Mark Udall does on everything. He's been with the president on 99% of the votes. I think 107 out of 108 votes he was on every issue with the president. Now, beyond that, he's now going to play this game like he did with the NSA spying on people type thing. He's going to play this game where he's been with the president the whole time, but now he's going to be the bold champion here in Colorado for immigration reform. And he's going to say, Mr. President, he's going to stand up and he's going to challenge Obama. And the reason why he's going to do this is because Barack Obama is sitting at 37% as far as his favorability ratings. And Mark Udall is smart enough to know that he needs to distance himself from Obama. So just like the immigration executive order threat was a ploy to get the GOP to overreach and go for impeachment, this recension is just another political ploy. It's to allow those like Mark Udall to distance themselves from him and claim that they're still trying to move the needle forward for the La Raza activists and people like that. It's a total political cover play both ways. And I mean, to a certain extent, you gotta respect it. You gotta respect what they're doing, especially if you want to learn from it and actually be able to effectively counter it.
Well, okay.
Let me go to Thomas first, and then I'll go to you, Joe.
All right. You know, this is a crass political correction. This is to save those people who, you know, won, Democrats that won in red states in the historic election of 2008. That's all this is. The majority of those states don't have a large Hispanic population. People that are going to the polls and voting, maybe illegally because they don't have IDs. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Okay, so it's a political calculation, that's right. But do you know what the thing that drives me nuts more than anything else about this whole thing? Where in the hell is the messaging on our side? There's a vacuum right now, right? We've already allowed them to beat us with a false narrative. Now there's a vacuum here. And there's going to be a vacuum until the next election in 2016. So where is like the laying of the groundwork and the messaging right now? Where is it?
That's a good question. I mean,
because
I think there's initiatives that are out there that are working. I think Libre is one of the great groups out there that is doing great work in places like Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico. I think that they can do even greater work. But honestly,
you know what? I stand corrected on that because you're right about that. Because I forgot them, and I'm a cynical Charlie today, so I'm glad you brought that up because there are people in groups that are doing stuff, and we need to highlight that more. But it can't be just on our side. I mean, and on the base grassroots, it has to be picked up by some of these people, that get TV time whenever they walk into the halls of the Capitol and everything. So I think we need to start applying pressure on that with some of these organizations and ideas.
Well, I think we're in a hard position to message to Hispanics who are here legally because a lot of us inherently want rule of law to reign, and I can respect that philosophy, but I think we're missing out on great opportunities to take people who have shown initiative and have been willing to risk their lives to get here, and put them on a path to being a successful citizens.
There was a poll that I saw. It must have been a couple months ago, but it was something like 85 to 90% of those people who were actually immigrants and went through the system had to wait, paid the fees and everything and such. They are so highly offended that there's even a rumor that somebody could basically just skip across a Rio Grande, with a bag of Doritos and basically become citizens.
Well, I'm offended by it too. It sucks. But at a certain point, you have to deal with the reality that's here.
Yeah.
And I think we need to go back to treating people as individuals and not looking at these things as big old groups or
Right.
blocks of people and caste system them in and out of, welfare and stuff. No matter what it is, I'm sick of looking at people like that. There's a lot of people who are coming up who are going to be great people. There's a lot of people who are coming up who are absolute scoundrels. Now we need to learn how to go through and process these people and do it with the knowledge that we're choosing future citizens. And we need to do that thinking about that and not let the people who are going to fail at life, to quote Eric Erickson, not let the people who are going to fail at life in. That's where we need to do it, and we need to think about it and do it realistically and logically and deal with the reality as it exists. So there.
so there. I didn't hear Eric's comments. Were they controversial?
Yeah, they were quite controversial. Eric basically talked about the minimum wage and said if you're like over 30 and you're still working for minimum wage, you've probably failed at life, and you need to check yourself. Which I probably agree with that to some extent. But there were qualifiers on that before and after, and Eric's a good guy, and he's not a guy who uses class.
I'm working in conservative new media right now, so I'm working for below minimum wage.
Right, exactly. Now, Joe, you were going to say something about the immigration before Leduc jumped in, and then I went off. So what was it you had for us?
I completely forgot. Although I will say that
this is why we have 5s of viewers.
Yeah. I will say that one of the qualifiers on Eric's quote there is the people who are like over 30 on minimum wage are failing at life, but it's the people who are working like 3 minimum wage jobs over 30, and it's Obama who's failed them. I think we need to keep that important qualifier in mind. But as far as this immigration issue goes, I remember what I was going to say is that that's a great idea for a strategy, is to use the getting rid of the executive order idea as a campaign strategy. But half the time I wonder if our political opposites are that smart.
They are, and not to bring up Eric again, but Eric had that great post about how the president's not checked out. He has a plan. They're working towards a plan, and when they do this stuff, they strategize for years. When they took over Colorado, you got to read the blueprint. You got to understand how these guys work. They test this stuff out in different states long before they ever launch it nationally. And they've been doing this for years and years and years and years. They have better battle plans for the midterm elections than they have for ISIS. And that's the reality.
Oh, there's 2020 plans, I'm sure, on that side.
Oh, yeah, and you expect when it comes to a political battle, yeah, they've got the battle plans, but when it comes to an actual strategy for dealing with something that has legit value to our world, they've got nothing. But another thing, on the immigration issue, it may be a good battle plan for states like Colorado, but look at where their embattled Democrats really are. And do you think that it's worth? Is it possibly is the cost-benefit analysis of it? Is it worth inciting? Is it worth inciting the wrath of Hispanic activists at this point to drop that?
Well, here's what you're actually asking, and since today is the opening day of not opening day, but the first Sunday of NFL regular season, I will use a football analogy here. Right now, the Obama administration is running a prevent defense for the 2014 midterms because they know that we have a potential wave on our side. They know that if the issues break our way here and there, just one or two things, we're going to see margins go up for all of our people in every single state that we're running people in. So they're worried about that. They're definitely worried about that, and I think that's why they did something like this. It's like a prevent defense in football. Now, the chances of it working, well, chances of a prevent defense working in football, you never really know. You can be putting yourself into the fire, or you can be saving your butt. You just don't know.
Well, I go back to my state because that's what I know best. Mary Landrieu can't take use of this strategy. Tom Cotton, Mark Pryor can't make use of this strategy. What's her face? Michelle Nunn in Georgia can't really make use of this strategy.
But it takes heat off of them, is what I'm saying, though. It takes heat off from the Republican side, and then it's a two parts strategy. It takes heat off of people like Land and whatnot, and it allows people like Udall to maneuver against the president and try to distance himself. It's two different parts.
But in the case of some of these southern Republican Bible Belt kind of states, where getting the Democrat vote out is already tentative, to somewhat alienate another group seems like a really risky maneuver. Udall, as we see in this poll, still has a fair enough lead that maybe he could have survived without it, whereas it could potentially cripple another race that they were really kind of hoping to keep.
Well, so let me play Democrat operative for just a second.
Donna
and
Brazile. Let's say I'm Donna Brazile.
Okay, let's say I'm Donna Brazile. And here's the thing: the hillbillies, they believe they can beat them, and they believe they can beat them by just black turnout. And now, if I was a Democrat operative, the way I would do that, I would blow up Mississippi and let it be known in Arkansas, let it be known in Louisiana, and it would be so easy to do. All they would have to do is agree with what conservatives were saying, that the Barbers and Thad Cochran were playing dirty pool and using race to gin up blah blah blah, and there you go. Now they're going to max out American vote in a off-year election without Obama on the ticket. So that's me as a Democrat operative.
Wow. Donna, great job.
Thank you.
Absolutely agree 100% with that, I think.
You don't have the look of, I don't know what maybe it's the hair, but you just don't have the look of Donna Brazile.
Well, that's because I don't get professional makeup like she does.
Is that something else you can shake down donors for, as our own little makeup kits for this show?
Yeah, we need some powder. You see this glare? I'll tell you. Mm-hmm. But I think we're about 35 minutes into the show here. We've covered a lot of ground so far, and I'm actually pretty happy about that, because usually you guys, I'm having to carry you the whole time. But I appreciate your effort this time. So let's kind of transition a little bit from immigration to another story, which again, it's tangentially connected. It seems all of our stories tonight are connected by a line some way. Maybe Kevin Bacon is in charge of this tonight. I don't know. But let me say, we're going to move on to ISIS. And why I say it's connected to immigration should be obvious. Our southern border is not protected. We've had weeks worth of calls for heightened security from various people, outgoing CIA people, FBI people, Lieutenant General McInerney with his dire predictions. So let's talk more about ISIS and what they're capable of. This last week, there was another beheading. A journalist named Sotloff was beheaded, and they released a video that basically mocked Obama and said, we're still here, we're still cutting heads off. So Obama has finally kind of maybe sort of come to an agreement on possibly doing something about ISIL. And let me stop there for just a second and say there's a little disagreement between ISIL, using the term ISIL and ISIS, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But let me first start with Obama's reaction to Sotloff's beheading. He golfed, and let me go over to the Leduc here for a minute. You're not a veteran. You live in Detroit, which you should get a combat medal for that. But you haven't been overseas during reporting or anything like this. You see this guy get beheaded. Obama comes out and makes a statement, and then he goes out and plays a round of golf. How does that make you feel?
I'm not really into feelings, Aaron. That's all I got. Okay, so he doesn't. This isn't the reason why he doesn't care. You know, I understand the optics of it, and the optics are bad. And believe me, we'd be jumping all over. We'd be trying to defend somebody with an R after their name. I guess it's like, no, they're always president. Really, they've got the guy with the briefcase 100 feet away. But there's so many other instances of why he doesn't care. But I understand why this is so emotionally charged. The Obama, you asked me how I feel. The Obama administration's take, their policy on so many things makes me feel like Mr. Yuck. Remember Mr. Yuck?
Yes.
The green. That's everything it's almost everything that this administration does. They make me feel like Mr. Yuck. And
so, instead of having the "Don't worry, be happy" shirts with the smiley face, we should have Mr. Yuck shirts where it's just the green face and.
Yeah. And it's just, it's basically, it's horrible. And I'm torn. I flip a coin almost daily on this. And is this intentional, or is he just that inept because community organizer in Chicago really doesn't have a lot of depth to it? I'm confused.
Fundamental transformation.
Okay, yeah, you're right. And you know what? Thanks for you're full of good knowledge today. You're like a chick click box of fun. Because I remember when he said that he wanted to transform the nation like Ronald Reagan did. And while that perked my ears up, I was like, wow, because Reagan did really transform the country. And you know what? He's doing a 180. He's exactly doing the opposite of what Reagan did in terms of establishing America back as a force really for good in the world, having an economy that was growing, not just everything that we got going on right now, just ugh. So that's how I feel. I feel like Mr. Yuck.
Yeah, I often feel like Mr. Yuck as well. And on the Reagan point, he's like Bizarro Reagan. Or I don't know if you ever saw the Superman comic where
Bizarro
where
Reagan.
it assumed that Superman had landed in Russia instead of America. He would be
Red
that
Sun.
Superman. Yes.
By the way, just as a comics nerd, Red Sun is a phenomenal story that everybody should read. And I think at one point they were trying to make like an animated movie out of it.
It actually is a really, really good comic book, and if you like politics, you will love Red Sun for sure. But let me talk more on this beheading. A plug right in the middle of the show. Let me talk more about this beheading after a plug for a comic book. So that was really professional of me. I expect my Fox contract to be in the mail shortly.
Any day now.
Any day now. But let me go back to this. His response was to go golfing. And today on Meet the Press, or one of those shows, I can't remember which, the one with Chuck Todd, I think it's Meet the Press. Chuck Todd sat down. He had his interview with Barack Obama, and he asked him about this. And while they talked, it was all about the optics of it. It was all about the optics. It was no emotional feeling about him having any regret or remorse for going out and playing golf after hearing that one of the citizens of his nation, had his head cut off. And the thing that stuck out to me was that he played it off with was, hey, I was on vacation, and to transition back to being president from that, it's more difficult than people understand. I'm thinking to myself, are you freaking kidding me? You're complaining about having to transition off of vacation when you play golf like most people, like welfare recipients eat once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week? It's ridiculous to me that this guy has such, so little respect for his office that he says these sort of things. It just blows my mind. And it also blows my mind that the left wing out there, especially in the Twitterverse, they get on conservatives for talking about his golf and stuff, and they say that we should respect the president, all this stuff. It's, he needs to respect the office. He doesn't respect his own office, and that's why it's hard for me to respect him in office.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Yes.
All right, because this bugged me with Reagan, and this bugged me when they did it with W. You know that he spent too much time out. Reagan spent like a year and a half of his presidency out, at the Western White House, and Bush spent a year out in Crawford. Okay, would it have been better had he just gone up to the top floor of the White House, had a beer, and sat back and watched a sporting event? I mean, because you wouldn't have.
No,
right?
here's the difference. Here's the difference. It's not the physical location that matters. It's the attitude that he has. And
Okay.
this is why I brought up what I brought up about what he said to Todd about transitioning from vacation to being president. You're always president, even if you're on vacation.
Exactly.
That transition should never have to freaking occur.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying is that if he had made a statement, looked all somber, acted like he cared, and then gone back up to the second level of the White House, kicked back, had a beer, Valerie Jarrett, cracked fart jokes, and they were watching a sporting event, and nobody knew. Is that going to make everybody feel better?
See,
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think
thing.
that's much better than going out and hanging out with some guy and going golfing when it is literally like he comes up and gives a press statement with his golf shoes on. That's how. I mean, take a day off. One day.
Somebody should actually do a thing where he walks out of the press briefing room, rips off his clothes into a golf outfit, hops into a golf cart outside the door, and goes off. Okay. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't. At least to me, anyway. And I'm just being consistent because I thought it was stupid when they did it with W. I thought it was dumb when they did it with Reagan. To say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm really offended that he went golfing. Well, if he went upstairs and nobody knew, he still doesn't care. He doesn't care when he's out on the golf course. He doesn't care when he's up, getting bitched at Michelle for having a cigarette.
But he's the president of the United States. He's the president of the United States, and what he does and how he responds to things matters on a level that's different than your average person. And I think the way. What the message that he sent to ISIS that day was, go ahead, cut another head off. See if I care.
Well, then that defeats their purpose. If they're like, shit, he's just gonna go play golf. We could chop as many heads off. It isn't worth us to chop any heads off if he doesn't care.
No, you misunderstand their purpose. Their purpose their purpose isn't to move us to do something by chopping heads off. Their purpose is to chop heads off. Their purpose is to kill, maim, destroy, and create a caliphate. So that's what they're going to do, no matter what.
That's what I'm saying overall is that I don't think they care what his response is. If he went into the war room immediately afterwards, or he went to golf, they don't care. That's not in their calculation. Okay.
But
the American people care.
Right.
Let's stop for just a minute and let's leave all the liberal garbage behind and let's be honest for a second. The president. It is kind of a patriarchal position. Yes. You are kind of a father figure to the nation, okay? Yes. Even though a lot of people don't like that, it's true. When we think about families being the smallest form of government, that's why we think that way, because the father's in charge and blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing. He needs to act differently, not just the message he sends to ISIS, but the message he sends to Americans. And, when Americans feel that their life is worth a 2-minute speech that he doesn't really care about, to me, that's how we get less people joining the military. That's how we have people leaving the military who would have stayed in other circumstances. They become depressed with the idea of defending a country where the president doesn't even care about its own people.
Well, I mean, look at the Prime Minister of Great Britain, who quit his vacation to head back to work, and we don't know what he did when he got back. He might have gone, to his private residence, but he was back at home, with the optics of looking like he cared, and it was an American citizen, and America's own president couldn't even muster up that kind of, he couldn't even pretend that for more than, however long his speech was that day.
I'm beyond that. I know what this man's policies are, and he does not care. So to me, it's just irrelevant how he portrays it. I think through his actions. He could go and give a 10-minute speech, you know, and just be absolutely just heartfelt, wrenching about it. I wouldn't believe a word he says about it because his actions in terms of the world stage, I think, portray that. And
okay, now,
what you said, Joe, about, you know, Cameron is true, but Cameron actually shows through policy that he actually cares. I think our president just doesn't at all. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right on. I think you're right on that. I don't think he cares about this sort of stuff. But let me get to the main point on ISIS. We just spent a lot of time on a tangential point. But the main thing I wanted to get to on this is that we kind of sort of have a strategy at this point. Now, the strategy from Obama to you know, destroy ISIS or ISIL, as he says. Let me do this point quick on that. ISIL is Islamic State, is something Levant. ISIS is the Islamic State. Now, the reason Obama doesn't use ISIS is because he doesn't want to go into Syria. That's what this is all about. He wants to limit the engagement in Iraq, where ISIS militias are there, and he wants to drive them out of Iraq, basically. Now, there's probably reasons for this. He thinks he has the authorization to do this already without going to Congress. If he were to have to go into Syria, of course, he would have to come back to Congress and get an AUMF in order to go through and actually put boots on the ground in Syria. Right now, I don't think either of those things are options. It's going to be a limited air campaign with us leading from behind in a coalition of different armies, and most of the on-the-ground operations will be handled by the Iraqi military, which honestly is paid less than the ISIS military in Iraq, and the command structure there has fallen apart since we left under President Obama's direction. So I think that it's not a real strategy to take on ISIS. He has no intentions of going into probably hand. At this point, we got to kind of wait and see what's going to happen to see whether or not we have to start pushing ground troops into Iraq in higher quantities.
Well, I mean, you know,
Thomas, you were trying.
We just sent another 350 or 400 quote-unquote advisors, you know, so, you know, that it's beginning to sound a little bit like mission creep, you know. I really wouldn't have a problem if we had to put people on the ground there to, you know, crush this, and we put a coalition of the non-confused, hopefully, together where, you know, we could lead and, you know, basically, you know, crack open some skulls, because as, you know, we referred in the last segment there, these guys, you know, they're not interested in money, they're not interested in political goals. Okay? They kill non-believers, they win. You kill them, they win. They think they win. I mean, how do you deal with that? It's incredibly troubling.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm going to pass over to Joe here. In a minute, but if you want to know how to deal with that, there was actually a post by Bill S. at RedState.com on the front page that lays out an ISIS strategy, which is basically defeat them all, decimate them, kill every last one of them, and the sympathizers that follow them and support them. Absolutely decimate them. Let loose the full force of our military along with our special ops communities and intelligence communities and go out there and seek and destroy. That's the only way that this is, I mean, it sounds crazy, but literally we need a 21st century crusade.
Can't we do like a giant ant trap where we put a big tent in the middle of these places and we put preview of the 72 virgins, and you pack the tent, you blow it up, and then you move down the road, you put another tent up.
At the very least, Roach Motel. I mean, can't we do that?
Hasn't anyone thought of this yet? Do I have to come up with all the solutions for America, for Christ's sake? Making less minimum wage and conservative new media? You bastard.
Between you and me, that makes two more strategies than the president has, because my strategy was to just give them all corgis, because nobody can be upset when you have corgis. So if we just raise the money to give everybody in ISIS a corgi, at least one, they're all of a sudden happy. They're not going to try to kill us anymore. I think that is a legit strategy.
You gave
It's certainly a better strategy than what the president's come up with so far.
You gave
The
me
only problem is that those guys would eat a corgi as an appetizer.
Then
So
maybe they can absorb some of that happiness.
yeah, by osmosis.
Yes.
Observe it, osmosis stuff. All right, that's awesome. So there you go. Pretty much the ISIS strategy in a nutshell: corgis and kill them all.
Really?
Maybe we just blow up some corgis that we give to them. Like suicide corgis. We could probably market that, suicide corgis. I don't know exactly what the price would be, but I think we could get a defense contract on suicide corgis.
Oh, at least $2 million.
I want you to work on that for the next week.
Oh.
Let's see, how quickly can we get PETA on our ass? Because that would be phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, PETA, come at me, bro. All right, Leduc.
Yeah.
What were you saying? What were you saying before I was in there? You were going to say something, but I jumped in and talked over you.
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, great. You're useless.
I just thought Joe's idea was phenomenal, building upon my phenomenal idea of basically putting a tent up, 72 Virgins preview, and then you just blow it up.
72 virgin corgis who have suicide vests.
No bacon. None. There's no bacon in this tent.
None.
Absolutely.
Okay. So there's the ISIS strategy. There you go. I think we can win this thing.
I think this show's gone terribly awry, and frankly, I blame Caleb.
I blame Caleb for not being here as well. Absolutely. Caleb, I hope you're well. I hope you're not dying in a ditch somewhere,
No.
which is often the case.
He's
but
passed out nude in a pool right now.
that is actually highly likely. Caleb Howe is probably nude, passed out in a pool, and he's probably as red as my RedState red shirt.
Oh yeah, that's.
But let me get us back on focus here, back on track. One last tangent from ISIS. Let's go back a couple years to 13 Hours at Benghazi. Now, this was a documentary done with 3 of the survivors of the Benghazi tragedy in September 11th, 2012. Or 2011. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
It was 2012. It was right before.
2012. Yeah, right before the election. 2012. Sorry. 13 Hours at Benghazi was a documentary done by Fox News with three of the survivors from the Benghazi tragedy, and they went through and they told their stories about how it went down in their view. They talked about the stand-in. They talked about times wanting to get there and get over there and save the ambassador and everybody else in the compound. They went into detail, quite a bit of detail, so much detail that I left feeling emotionally spent after viewing this entire thing. And it raised a lot of questions, and it directly controverts what has been said by the State Department on multiple levels. And it really, really, really does show the need for the select hearings on Benghazi to go forward, and for us to find out what is really going to happen, or what really did happen during those 13 hours, and what led up to those 13 hours. Leduc, I know you watched the special as well. Let me go ahead and just get your take on it real quick, and just explain how it made you feel and what you learned from it.
Like you said, the 3 gentlemen that were involved in that night, it incredibly detailed, laying it out the way that they did, and then kind of going back and crossing with, what the administration's whole story was, what the House Republicans, in terms of what they found, that there was no stand-down order that these guys got and everything and such. This is just such a huge cluster, you-know-what, and it just sounds more and more like, there probably could have been a legitimate reason that you wouldn't have sent, armed Americans into a situation like that, because, they wouldn't have had the advantage. But it just sounds like that wasn't the consideration. It was just a total breakdown, and that these guys wanted to go in and help their fellow Americans out, and they were told no. And they eventually, if correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, they eventually just said, "Screw it, we're going."
In the end, they just kind of said, "Screw it, going." Two of the operators said, "Screw it, we're going." The State Department official with them was still trying to get them to hold off, but
in the one
they rolled out.
In the one guy, when they said, "Would Chris Stevens and the other gentleman, would they still be alive had you guys gone right when you got the phone call?" And they were all unequivocally, "Yeah, they'd still be alive."
They all said absolutely. You know, and one of the guys, I remember his nickname. His nickname was Tonto, and he was an Army Ranger, and he was a really, I was special operations. I was support for 10th Special Forces Group a long time ago. You can see my little stuff here behind me. But I got a lot of time with shooters. I kind of can pick them out of a crowd. And this guy, Tonto, he was your quintessential operator. The guy knew what he was talking about. You could tell by his body movements how he reacted, and even some of the things that he said during it. When he was asked by Brett Baer, and by the way, Brett Baer should get a freaking award for this documentary. He was absolutely amazing, phenomenal. He was asked by Brett Baer kind of what it was like to be in a firefight, and this guy Tonto, which, this was classic. He was like, "It's absolutely beautiful. It's, you see tracers flying, and it's a beautiful thing." But it his testament, what he talked about, and the detail that he talked about it with, it just reminded me of so many stories I had heard when I was in from operators, that it just struck me as absolute truth. And I'm offended that our State Department has basically called these guys liars and disavowed them already, when not only have all of these guys had great great records in the military, but they then got out and worked for a private security firm and went back into harm's way multiple times to multiple places, not just Libya, not just Iraq, but all over the world and all the different hotspots where the State Department needs to be protected. And then the State Department turns around and disavows them and calls them liars. It's shocking to me, and it just pisses me off more than anything. There's two of these guys actually live here in Colorado, and I would definitely like to buy them a beer someday if I could ever meet up with them somehow. So if you happen to be watching the Red State Weekly Briefing, Tig and Oz, I'm Aaron Gardner. I'm in Colorado Springs. Look me up. We'll have a beer.
The end of that, where they show them sitting around the campfire, the two of them that live in Colorado, like you said, in neighboring counties, and they're like, "Well, hey, we'll meet up with them again one day." I mean, that just wrenched my gut, because these guys, I don't think they knew them, but they went and they basically tried to protect them, and they laid their lives down, or potentially laid their lives down, to go save people that they did not know. Quintessential freaking Americans. And basically that we did this, and we're still to this day, has the President, has the State Department, has anybody apologized for saying, "Oh, it was a video. It had nothing to do with 9/11. It was a video." We were able to ascertain that in 15 freaking seconds.
Right, and that's something I want to point out. These operators who were on the ground there in Benghazi and had been there for a while, they said they had never heard of the video. And that's something that they pointed out. And as you were saying, we lost lives there. We lost a lot of lives there. But we also had injuries. This guy, Oz, who was basically the team leader for this global response team, he basically had his left arm shot off. He's had 13 surgeries to reattach his arm from here, all the way down here. He's got huge scarring going across. And that happened in the middle of a firefight. And he had to climb. Not only did he have to continue in the firefight and try to use his arm like this in order to fire, but he had to end up climbing down a ladder afterwards with all of his gear, with one hand and one hand dangling off of his arm by a thread. He's had 13 surgeries since then to fix his arm, and he still doesn't. He no longer has an opposable thumb on his left hand, so he'll never be right again, and he's going to take that with him the rest of his life. And all of that, on top of all of that, he's got to deal with the fact that the truth isn't out there, and that this administration is lying about what happened in Benghazi. It's absolutely shocking to me. I think everyone should go out and definitely view.
It's on YouTube already.
View the 13-hour on YouTube already, so check that out. It's time for us to wrap up our show. We are 1 hour in. It was a really quick show. We thank you all for coming and watching tonight. Thank you for interacting with us on Twitter as well. And make sure to come back next week. Let me go ahead and do the roundtable real quick. Joe, where can everybody find you at?
You can find me at RedState on the front page or on my Twitter account, JoeC_Esquire. And I just learned today that there is a DVD called Elmo All Day, which sounds like the worst of all possible hells.
Leduc, where can the people find
you? Will not find me over at Joe's house listening to Elmo all day, because that sounds like a personal hell. Leduc at FTRradio.com, and then, of course, Irish Duke 2 on the Twitters.
All right, and I am your host, Aaron Gardner, managing editor of RedState.com. You can email me at aaron@redstate.com. You can also find me on the Twitters at Aaron_RS. And I'm on the Facebook, Aaron Gardner, but screw you, I'm not your friend. Thank you all. Have a great night.